Hello and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And happy Wednesday to everyone. And hopefully, you guys are having an amazing day. And as always, we are bringing another amazing person, guest to you guys. And she is truly amazing. I've known her for quite some time. She is a rock star and a great friend of mine. And she does amazing work in the grief field. And she also has an amazing podcast as well. Now, before we get started, if you haven't already, head on over to their YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. And before I bring her up here, I just want to remind you that this is for educational purposes only. Now, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section and we will answer them as we go along. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my friend and my colleague, Miss Faith Sage. And Faith, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. And, thank you for being on the show again. We always have great conversations, in and outside of the podcasts and things that we do. So before we get started, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell people where you're from.
I am Faith Sage. I am from Buffalo, Minnesota.
Awesome,
Not much
awesome.
snow this year, though.
Not much snow this year,
Not
really?
this. We've barely gotten anything this year.
Well, you know what? You can have some of the snow that we have. We got because up in the mountains over here in Colorado, we got all kinds of snow falling over there. People are skiing, snowboarding, falling down, getting chased by bears, all
Oh,
kinds of
geez.
stuff. And it's just crazy. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going up there. I'd rather be down. Well, I can't even say that anyway, because we get a lot of snow in the city as well. I'm in the
Yeah,
foothills, so we, I'm always picking snowball fights with the kids when it happens. So it's always a good time, right? And of
absolutely.
course, we already know this about Tony, right? Uh, but now I've been on your show, right?
Yep.
So just a brief summary. Tell people about your podcast.
Okay. So the podcast is called Release. And my intention was that when I started it was to have people on that had lost a significant one in their life, whether that's a mother, father, significant other, son, daughter, all those things. And then it kind of transformed into this much bigger role where now people are coming on that they have lost like a way of life. So now they're disabled. They are unsolved mysteries. I've had some of those on there.
Mhm.
It's just morphed into something more. I just felt this calling to let people tell their story was
Yeah.
all that it was, and it's turned into this beautiful thing, and I've got people still chiming in to be on the podcast, and I'm not even advertising for it anymore.
And that's never a bad thing, right?
No, it's not a
It's
bad
never
thing.
a bad thing. Because you remember when we first started, right? When we first started in this grief field, there wasn't a whole lot of people out there doing the things that
No,
we were
there
doing,
wasn't.
right? And you and I have been knowing each other now for a couple of years, a few
Mhm.
years, and it's kind of crazy. I tell people, we actually met when I started the Global Grief Conference,
Yep,
and you were one of the few people that stayed around after that crazy incident, right?
right.
And we've been rocking ever since then. And I would tell you, it's always an honor to talk with you. It's always a privilege to just bounce ideas off of you. Crazy, crazy intelligent, and crazy funny. I mean, we got some stories, right?
Alright.
We got some stories, but
Well, thank
nothing.
you, I appreciate it.
Oh,
What is it? You do the heart.
yes, yes,
What's
the
my
heart.
I
I
don't
think
know, my
so.
daughter does what was it?
This is what we're doing. I mean, that looks like a circle. I'm,
Kind of,
don't
kind of.
judge me. Don't judge me, okay? But
Judgment-free zone.
nothing is more powerful than your story, right? And how you got into this work. So let's take us on that journey of
Mm,
how Faith became who she is today and why you're so passionate about the work that you do.
okay. So, let's see. In 2005, I met this man and he was I didn't want anything to do with him, honestly, to be honest. But then we were set up on this blind date because we didn't really talk the first time we saw each other. And after I after we met, it was we started blending a family, and then we got married. So we were only together for 8 months when we got married. He had 2 little ones and I had 3 little ones. And from that moment on, like, I realized this was the first person in my life that I had had, um, as a significant other that had children.
Mm,
So all the other the guys that I had dated never had children, and so mine were the only ones coming in, to the relationship. And so with him, I decided that I didn't wanna be that stereotypical Disney, stepmother, and I wanted to actually, like, love my stepchildren, and I wanted to treat them like mine, like, I wanted to, give them something happy to look forward to and take them on trips and do things with them and impart this knowledge and stuff. And so for 11 years, that's what I did with his children. And then in 2016, we got the call that uh, his daughter was in a horrific car wreck and she didn't make it. And
yeah,
that's when our world just started crumbling down. It was, because we had 5 children that we were blending together and we had been married, for 11 years. She was 7 when I met her. And so now she's, just turned not too long into 19th year. So it was maybe she was 8. Maybe my math is not mathing. She was 19 when she died, I know that.
yeah.
And it was it was at that moment that I knew I wanted to help people in grief.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to help, because the blended families don't get enough recognition either.
Right.
The stepmothers don't get enough recognition, the stepchildren don't get enough recognition. The mothers and the fathers get tons of it, but I knew I wanted to do something. But I sat on it. And I waited, and I waited, and I thought, "Well," because I downplayed my role in her life, and so I didn't do anything, and I just kept building my businesses because I was an entrepreneur or at the time, and so I had was doing sales funnels and whatnot, and then in 2022, another freak vehicle accident, we lost our 4-year-old granddaughter. And so at that moment, I changed my whole business and went straight to grief. Didn't look back. I shut everything down. I finished out the clients that I had, and I just dove headfirst into grief. And I think that January of 2023, I wrote my book, this one, and I wrote another one in February. I've got a couple more coming out this year. I started groups. I do individual counseling. And so it's just that's the wild and crazy journey that we've been on there that I've been on with my husband and my kids and my family.
Yeah.
How I
Yeah.
met you, I was just first into grief,
Yeah.
and I was like, "This is coming out. I wanna start practicing getting my message out there. I wanna start telling, the story of my daughter and my granddaughter and how us as a couple, we've made it through it, and not only made it through, but made it stronger. How the connections that we've built with his ex-wife and her husband, like, it's been insane, the relationship that we've built with them." And a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, that's just insane. How can you talk to the ex-wife?" And I'm like, "Well, no.
Isn't it
When you go
crazy
through
how
things
that
like we
goes?
went through, you
Right.
you realize there's more to life than just a title of ex."
Mhm.
It's still her mother.
This is very true. This is very true. Now, you said something interesting because being in the grief field, I think we see a lot of destruction when it comes down to couples in grief, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And especially when it comes down to child loss,
Mhm.
right? And you have a blended family, you got the ex, and let's walk us through the journey of when that first happened. How did that affect? I mean, how did that affect your relationship? Your marriage, and what was some of the steps that you took to keep to keep that bond going and grow together? After such a tragic loss.
So when it first happened, I completely shut down. I am a person that I'm a fixer. I like to problem solve, find solutions, move through things. This was a problem that I couldn't solve, and therefore I just shut down.
Mhm.
I remember sitting on the back patio just staring out back into the trees and just nothing. I was in what I call the state of nothingness. Nothing mattered. I didn't want to eat anything. I didn't want to shower. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to socialize. I wanted to do nothing but just sit there. I was only existing at that moment in time. And my husband, and I don't even know how long I stayed there. I don't know how long I sat in this, space of nothingness. But at some point in time on that, my husband, bless his soul, he came out there and he tapped me on the shoulder and he's like, "Hey, I really think that so I've been listening to these things." He didn't really know how to say it,
Mhm.
but essentially he was like, "Hey, you need to do something. You can't just sit here for the rest of your life." But he's like, "Hey, I've been listening to these NDEs, these near death experiences, and they're pretty good. Maybe you should try listening to one." And so I did. And I'm like, "Man, whatever. It is what it is." And I listened to another one, and I listened to another one, and I listened to another one. And finally, it started connecting with me because these experiences, when you listen to them, these people are having communication. They're seeing outside of their body and they're hearing and seeing everything that's happening around them, including themselves.
Mhm.
But it's just these weird oddities. And I'm like, okay. And I go back, we're spiritual beings and we're always connected. And therefore she's always around me. And that's what pulled me out of that funk, was just knowing that no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, she's here.
Right.
She's absolutely with me every moment of the way. And so I think that that's how I came out of it. But then our relationship, we just talked. We actually talked about things. We included the children in. We made it so that the conversation wasn't taboo. You could talk about her anytime you wanted. If you're having a bad day, let's discuss it. You know,
Yeah.
let's sit in silence. Doesn't matter. Let's do something
I think
instead of
that's
bottling it
important.
up.
I think that's important that what you just said right there, because me being a male, it's hard for us to communicate, right? And sometimes we do need someone to say, "Hey, maybe we should just sit down and just you know whatever we feel that we need to do, that's what we need to do."
Right.
Right. And but not rush it though, because we all know, when grief happens, grief, you're going to do you, and the other person has to do grief the way that they feel, and,
Right.
and things like that. And from a male's point of view, I've seen the destructive nature that grief can have
Hmm.
on men, especially in relationships. I just got done, and this is crazy. You guys are going to see it on social media here shortly once I get done putting it together. But I wrote a poem, right? And it's called "We See You," and it just comes from a place of understanding, and it's really deep, and I hopefully it can have the impact on those who are reading it, and maybe they can understand where it's coming from, right? Because it comes from a place of deep understanding, but it also comes from a place of, you know, the reality of
Hmm.
it. You know what I'm saying? From a male's point of view, I'm talking to those men out there because I want more men to come to
Right.
my men's support groups and things like that, whether it be virtually or in person. But it's we see you. That's all I'm going to put out there for right now, right? I want
Yeah.
to add a little music to it. Hopefully, it touches some people out there. But I want to go back to something because you said something, and I didn't even know this when I first met you, right? Because we met in 2022
Hmm.
when I was doing the Global Grief Conference, first one ever. You already know, it was a lot of fun putting together. The first one ever done. So for those out there, we put together some crazy stuff before, but it
Yeah.
was a beautiful thing. You was my late night
I was your late
speaker.
night MC.
Yeah, with the late night MC, and you was out there rocking it, right? And it was the first one, 72 hours. 72 hours straight, which is freaking crazy. What was I thinking? Like, but it was a blast though, right? Building the blueprint to that. But one thing I didn't know, you was so fresh into it because you had just lost your 4-year-old granddaughter. And for you to come and want to be a part of something like the Global Grief Conference, like watching you speak and talk the way that you did, I wouldn't have never put two and two together. And you just now telling, see, you've been holding secrets away from me, Faith. We're gonna have to talk about this. I thought we was
Yeah,
better than this, Faith.
when you're in grief, it's just like you don't want those to be the first words out of your mouth. It's like you want to get to know people. I don't ever want to be seen as a victim of the things that have happened to me. And so therefore I don't lead with that. I lead always with confidence, and I lead always with hope and perseverance and love. And, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't hide it. I talk about it.
right.
I don't
But
know.
you did. You led with confidence. And again, being a part of the Global Grief Conference and watching your segments that you did, because you was late night. You was like, I'll take those late
I was
night spots,
midnight. I
right?
took midnight.
Yeah, you
And
took those. You took those midnight spots.
I did either 3 or 4 of them.
I think you did 3, but I can always go back and check too. But yeah,
I
you
did
did.
3 of them.
You was there every night, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You was there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night.
Yeah.
And you did a beautiful job. I mean, the way that you presented, again, I would not have thought that you had gone through something so recently, because most of the time when people come in there, when it's such a recent thing, we're going through we're going through the grief
Mm-hmm.
challenges. I don't like to really call them stages,
Yeah, I don't either.
because those stages, as we both know, if a lot of people aren't familiar, those stages are really, they're a great baseline. And we got
Yeah.
some other things coming up too as well, right? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Because we got a program that we're putting together now. We're not going to talk too much about it, but I will say you guys are going to be amazed as everyone who's coming together to put this program together. But I will say it will change how we show up with those who are bereaved, and the people that are involved are
Mm-hmm.
freaking amazing, right? And Faith just joined in with us and everything. So, but we'll talk a little bit more about that and everything when we get the chance to, hopefully before our next meeting. But your 4-year-old granddaughter, I mean, you've already lost the daughter,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now you lost a 4-year-old granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
How is Faith showing up with who you are at that moment to get you through, to help you start to move through another tragic incident? And they're both car accidents.
Right. Both freak vehicle accidents. Absolutely.
Right.
I think with my granddaughter, I mean, that was such a weird dynamic. I remember, first of all, the phone call, because you don't ever get it any other way. It's always a phone call.
Very true.
And I was out of state at the time. We were doing siding on our house, and it was during the pandemic, so nothing was available. And so we had to drive, 5 hours one way and then 5 hours back to pick up, with the truck and trailer, and pick up siding for our house.
Mm-hmm.
And so that morning, I mean, at the time, my son and his wife and his 4 little girls were living with us. And because they just bought a house, they're moving stuff in. And it happened that day. Get the call. I'm 5 hours out. That morning, my husband and I were going to take our granddaughter with us that day, but we thought she'd get so bored riding in the vehicle with us for 5 hours. So we didn't take her. Well, then I get the call as we're 5 hours out and we're about to head back that tragic accident happened. She didn't make it. And so then we head back. And of course, I'm just in tears and my husband's crying and like we're helpless. We're out. There's nothing we can do.
Right.
And so, and this is where I talked about the ex-wife. It's not just the ex-wife. It was, my daughter's mother. She actually went to the hospital with my son to be with him and his wife until I could get there. And so like it just building the community around us. But as far as going back to that, it was to me, it felt like Kassondra 2.0. I'd been here. These felt familiar. This was a familiar territory that I had already walked. It sucks to say it. Like it makes me tear up now saying it, but I had already been there before. And and watching your child, plan their child's funeral, that's a whole other level of shit. Pardon my language.
No, no. Hey,
But
you're perfectly fine.
I just felt out of body when I was there watching them. It's like, I remember doing the same thing. I remember being in the same spot, doing these same things. And it just felt odd to me at that moment. And it just stands out to me in that moment that I'm watching them and seeing the anguish and the grief and all of the turmoil that they're experiencing in their life and knowing I can't help it, knowing I can't do anything to stop it. And that's the only thing you want for your children is to be able to protect them from harm.
right.
And it felt like now I've got two that I'm, a three if you want to add in, the pain of my son, and going through that. So
I mean, because you became a natural in the grief field, and I don't think people really understand that. Most people, grief has a strange way of directing us in putting us on the path of where we need to go. Not everybody, and I was just seeing this to someone else, right? Because it's almost like we're fast tracked.
yeah,
Right?
yes,
When it comes
yes,
down to it, like it's there inside of us. We just don't know what it is. And then all of a sudden, we're filled with information that we don't know where it came from. It's like a
that's
supercomputer
a
downloaded
spiritual
on us.
stuff. Like when you
Right,
tap
right.
into your own spirituality, I don't have to worry about the words to say because I know and I believe that they'll always be there exactly when I need them. Always.
Exactly. Exactly. Have you ever asked yourself where it ever comes from? Because I know I did, right? Especially coming from a place where I didn't even understand what grief was.
Mhm.
I didn't even know what grief was, right?
I did. The funny thing? I don't remember if I told you this or not, but after I was talking to, I think it was my daughter. No, I was answering a question in my private group, and I wanted to make sure that I was answering the question appropriately. We were talking about doing things. Oh gosh, why am I losing my words now? Um, not self medicating, but oh gosh. Anyway, it came up to where she thought that, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, we all have those.
Mm, yeah.
When we lose our loved ones, it's always shoulda, coulda, woulda, and it's always based upon you doing something more, being or whatever. And she wasn't sure if that was a coping mechanism, that's what we were talking about, coping mechanism or not. But that's what the stage that she was in. And I was doing my research and I'm looking up, okay, is shoulda, coulda, wouldas in grief a coping mechanism? I just want to make sure. I didn't think it was, but I wanted to make sure so that I didn't give some bullshit answer
Right.
and, and make sure it was thoughtful to the conversation that we were having. And so I looked it up and it said no, but here's PTSD. This is a PTSD when you're reliving the moments and the shoulda, couldas, and wouldas.
Hmm.
And it was at that moment I realized that I had PTSD after my daughter died. And then again after my granddaughter died. I had no clue that I had PTSD
Right.
until that moment. I'd always linked the PTSD. My husband was in the military as well, and I was the family readiness leader for his unit for like 10 years. And I had always linked PTSD with the military. That was the only place that I had linked it with, or like with extreme violence or something like that.
Hmm.
Never in my life did I link it with like losing a child, but it made perfect sense for all the steps that I had done after that. and what
Right.
took me out of my PTSD to actually bring me back into the world. It was insane.
Wow. A lot, and that's another aspect to it, right? That people never really think about.
I I never did.
Yeah, I didn't either. As a matter of fact, I've always associated, like you said, PTSD with military.
Yeah. Or police
Veterans that
officers
have come
or
back.
auto or, responders, things of that nature, like
Right,
these
right,
really, like,
right,
high intense moments. But if you think about it, when you lose someone, that's a high intense moment.
right. But I
Very
don't think we
extremely
really
high.
put two and two together, though, right?
Nope, I did
And
not.
now we know, right?
Yeah.
And I think it kind of directs us of how we show up with other people, because
Mhm.
having that understanding that PTSD can be associated in these different areas, whether it be from childhood trauma, domestic, very violent, or verbally, mentally
Right.
abusive relationships, friendships, etc., right? Jobs, things like that, and we don't really associate it to, but being in the grief world now, we've started to tie those in and going, no, don't disassociate this with this over here. This can be a key component into
Yeah.
helping you in your healing process and how you begin to maneuver this road, right? But we do have that understanding. We do sit around and go, you know what? We may not say nothing, but I think the knowledge that we have and the tools that we have, it helps us to be able to latch on to them and go, hey, how about we try this, right?
Right.
Never and being very careful not to give advice, right? Because
Right.
I think that's where sometimes I struggle when I talk to some people in the field,
Mhm.
right? Not all. Look, we're surrounded by good, like-minded individuals with great hearts and beautiful knowledge, awesome, beautiful people. And but you always run across that handful
You
that,
get a
you
handful
know,
here and there. You get someone
yeah,
here and there that's just a shit show, and they're just
right.
taking advantage of others, and, I mean, it happens in
We
everywhere
talked
you
about
go.
this, right? And um, just recently I had someone that I was supposed to have on a show, and she showed her true colors because and I was like, I'm glad I didn't show up, right? I'm glad I was off doing something different, because when she
Mhm.
did this, it reminded me, just like what you said, it was a damn shit show. And I had to come back to her, and I normally would not go after or say anything bad to anyone, but after the way that she had talked to me, um, and in her attitude, I just simply told her, I said, maybe this is not the field for you, because
And
I
that's
mean, and
okay
that's just
too.
me being honest. If I was the same way, I would want somebody to come and say, hey, maybe this is not for you, right? Maybe I need to go do something different, because we're in the habit of wanting to help others, right? And I just when she came after me, no biggie thing, no biggie. I'm not going to take it personal, but when she did that, I just came back and said, maybe this is not the field for you, because you're going to do damage that it's
Right.
going to take individuals like myself and those who are like me that have to go in and correct what you've done,
Well, it
like
also it I wanna add to that, because it's not even necessarily that people like us are gonna have to go in and fix what's done. What might happen is they might lump us all in the same category and never get
right,
the help that they
yeah,
need. That's the issue that, a lot of people will face.
this is very
Look at
true.
therapists. I've been
Mm,
raised my entire life to never talk to a therapist.
right,
Never. Because you don't talk to people about your issues or your problems, that's where the problem solver in me came from. You fix them. You fix them.
right,
And so, I've never talked to a therapist, and not that I wanna wear that as a badge of honor, it's just stating where I come from.
right,
Just stating where I come from, looking inside myself. I'm not opposed to talking to one, but for me to talk to one, obviously we have to match. And if
very true.
and all those things. But if someone's coming in and they're talking to a therapist or someone like us that's not a therapist, we're just in the grief field with firsthand knowledge,
Mhm.
and they get a bad experience, what are they gonna think? What are they gonna do? They're not gonna talk to anyone else again
Right.
because that shit never helped me. They're just in their own world, they're on their own for their own gain and blah, blah, blah. Same thing.
And that's where it is, because then, then they have trust issues,
Yes.
which makes it a little bit more challenging for us, for those of us who are out here just wanting to do,
Yes.
have a positive impact in our field of knowledge, right? Our field of gifting, as I would like to call it, right? I never considered myself to be nothing but a student in this field and everything like that. There's people who've given me titles, which I appreciate, but I cannot hold on to those titles and things like that. I'm just a student. I'm just a person, just like yourself,
Yep.
just wanting to have a positive impact in those that we come across. Because we do realize now that we're in this field that there's a lot of people in here that don't have others' best intentions, or they get stuck on a one track, right? And they become the best at and this is where I give them kudos. They become the best in that area.
Mhm.
Now, here's where the challenge comes for me, because although they're the best in that area, I think they sometimes forget that there's other variables, there's other things that you can learn to
Mhm.
become even better, even better student, so you can become an even better mentor, right?
Right.
And a better guide for those that we come across. And what I mean by guide, because people will look to us for that guidance,
Yeah.
right? You know what I'm saying? And so they will kind of follow our lead. And so I just I want people to just be careful, about where they're leading you to, because not everybody knows where we're going, right? And I have to tell people, don't follow me, because I know I'm just following this path over here. My path is going to be different from Faith's, right? And we've just been so blessed and so lucky to be on the same path. I mean, you're walking your path. I'm on the other side over here, and we walking parallel to where I can look over and go, "What you doing over there, girl?" And then you be like, "I'm doing me, whatever, Tony."
Right?
Right?
Exactly how it sounds too.
Right? And but we have so many other people that walk this journey with us, right? We have beautiful colleagues, right? Some beautiful
Too.
people that are, within the global grief network, right? We have some beautiful colleagues, man, of like-minded individuals that are out here doing amazing work to them. So I never want to discredit anyone out there. And I'm really quick to go, if I run across something that's really out of my league, I know that I can call on Faith, or Dave, or Claire, or any one of those individuals, and go, "Hey, look, this is what I got going on," right? Out of my realm of expertise over here. Can anyone pick this up? And I know that
Right.
they're going to be connected with the right type of people.
But that's because you're building a community as well. It's
Well,
not necessarily so I think of it as I have a lot of analogies, and I like to throw my analogies around. I like to sprinkle them here and there. So, we're all on this think of us, we're all in the ocean, right?
mhm,
When grief just happens, we're at the beginning, right? We got the rocks and we've got the waves crashing over us, and it feels like we just can't come up for air, and we keep
yeah,
getting piled under with every wave that keeps
yeah,
crashing and crashing and crashing. But eventually, we figure out how to get up and get air. We figure out how to get away from those waves, and we get out there. But sometimes we find like this little island out there, this little rock to sit on and catch a breath. And we're
mhm,
sitting on this little rock and we're watching these people, as they're getting crashed on by the waves and we're yelling at them, but they don't hear us. But then we've got the people that are further out that they've learned how to build a raft. They're now on the
yeah,
ocean. They're now sailing this ocean. They're not the best at it, but they're sailing on the ocean. They have more knowledge than we do. So we figure out, we get notes, we can hear them, we talk to them, we build our own raft. Well, they've magically found a ship. Now they're sailing across the seas, not necessarily to be, like peacocking across the seas in that fashion, but they figured out how to navigate those waves as
mhm,
opposed to being drowned by them at the beginning.
right.
And so that's, I'm out there on the raft. That's it. I'm nowhere else. I'm just trying to help, the ones above me, the ones behind me. and the ones, trying to save the ones that are crashing. If I can get my raft over the waves.
I'm glad that you said that, right? Because I have a question.
Yeah.
But before I ask my question, I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's tuning in on Instagram, LinkedIn,
Hi,
Facebook, and
everyone.
everything. Tracy, thank you for tuning in. Tracy is another person that that's out here doing amazing work as well.
Yes,
So
she's going to be
definitely
on my
appreciate her
podcast real
tuning in
soon.
on Instagram. Everybody who's tuning in over here, you guys, thank you for tuning in. If you guys have any questions, comments, please put them in the comment section, and we'll be sure to answer those as we go along. Other than that, I appreciate you guys' support, and we got a lot more stuff coming. So if you guys are enjoying the conversation, please reach out to Sage. Her information is in the description, and so yeah, I'll make sure that before we get off and everything, that she guys let you know where to find her as well. And but do you ever back to my question, do you ever feel as if sometimes, because I do this a lot, right? Because I'm a firm believer, I'm meeting people where they are. And
Mm-hmm.
I do love the raft analogy, and I often feel as if I'm in that raft, on a raft like that as well. Sometimes I will see people that are just in a really, really bad way, right? And they're just getting pummeled. Like maybe they jumped off the rock just to try to give it another go, right? It's not going too well. And the
Mm-hmm.
waves just keep pounding, rolling them up on the shore. I often feel sometimes when I see that, instinctively, it's to jump in and roll around with them in the waves while they're being pushed up on shore, just so I can give them something, a lifeline, going back to the raft that we have. But along the way, because I know my raft is going to be different, right? But along the way, it's like, hey, you know, helping them build and put together their rafts and everything, and give them a little bit of what I got going on. And and then that way, when we do part ways and things like that, they can take their raft and they can go along their journey. But I often feel sometimes that I'll jump off into the deep end with them, just to let them know, like, you're not drowning. It may feel like it, but you're not drowning. So hold on to my belt. You know what I'm saying? If you don't want to just hold on to my belt, and we'll roll this thing together, right? So that's my question. Did you ever feel that way from time to time?
Well, this one wise person once told me on another podcast that I was on, I used to. So first, let me state that I used to. But then I realized I don't know if they actually want my help. If they don't want my help, I am literally diving in to drown with them. If they want my help, then I can throw them the lifeline and bring them to my raft,
Mm,
show them all the things on my raft. But if I don't, and I just dive into that water with them and they don't actually want my help, a drowning person will drown another person.
mm.
100%.
I love
So
that.
I have peeled back on that, and it's
Okay.
really been an eye opener for me because I have to check to see if people actually want the help. Because
Yeah.
just because I see that they are in whatever it is that they're in, whatever stage of grief that they're in, and they're struggling and they're what sounds like they're wanting help, I don't know if they actually truly want the help
Mhm.
or if they're just okay with where they're at.
Okay. I definitely love that. I definitely love that because I didn't look at it from that way, because as a male, like you said, we're fixers, right?
I
You know what I'm
wanna
saying?
fix things
We,
too, I just
yeah.
wanna go in, but even I got this and I this analogy that was explained to me just was like a month or so ago. It
Mhm.
wasn't that long ago. But previous to that, like my other daughter, the youngest child, she would come into me at like 15, 16 years old, and she'd just be crying and crying, and I'm like, "Okay, what do we need to fix? Like, what's the problem? Let's brainstorm a solution."
Right, right.
And we got into a huge argument. And she's like, Mom, every time I come to you, I don't need to be fixed.
Mm,
Sometimes I just need to vent. And I'm like, okay. So we set it up to where when she would come in all crying and upset, I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to listen or do you want me to help solve? Which one do you want me to be?
Right. Right.
And she would tell me. She would, and that was how we had navigated those arguments because we'd fight all the time. Because I'm trying to fix the problem.
Right. Right.
She doesn't want the problem fixed. She just wants to vent. Like,
Mm.
okay, I need to take a step back. I need to, because I'm at a more emotionally keel place,
Hmm.
let me figure out what she actually needs before I throw my helpline in.
Right. I love that. I'm gonna take it to see every time we talk, we learn from each other, right? Because that has been my analogy. Now, of course, I didn't see the other half of
Right.
people not really wanting my help or things like that. I've been pretty fortunate so far. Everyone I've jumped on,
Yeah, and I think
it's
most
like,
people
hey,
do want it, but, like,
right,
if you're
right,
putting up roadblocks, then they're
right.
not
Now,
truly wanting it, you know?
again, I understand that too. I watch,
Yeah,
right? I watch and I listen. I'm very observant. So, and then and I was taught, I had a really good teacher. She was a narcissist. So I do understand. I mean, and I say that in the most respectful way, right?
absolutely. I
Oh,
mean, we learn from everyone we ever
right,
come in
right,
contact with, if
right.
we choose to learn from them,
If we choose to learn
the
from it.
good and the bad. It
Exactly. And like I said, although it was a really tough moment in my life, it was freaking, well, actually, I'm downplaying it. It was horrible, right?
Yeah,
This
of
woman
course.
destroyed everything that I was. The beautiful part about it was she helped me become a better man in society. And in turn, she gave me the gift of having more time with our son. And with that being said, I say to her, thank you for the lessons, thank you for the beatings, thank you for the challenges, thank you for putting me in a position to where you I had to go in and reconstruct myself, right? Because it did help. And a lot of people can't say that. A lot of people get caught up in the trauma and things like
They
that.
do.
It comes along with the territory. I'm starting to find,
It
and,
does,
and things like that.
but
But it
it's
was
still a choice. It's
yeah,
still a
it's
choice.
still a choice.
You
It's
have
still
a
a choice.
choice as to whether you're going to stay in the thick of it, or whether
Mhm.
you're about to crawl yourself out and rebuild yourself into who you choose to be.
Right,
Because you could still
right.
perpetuate that narcissism stuff, or you can choose to become a higher version and help people.
That's
It
very
I
true.
mean, you got lots of choices. Everyone does.
Yeah, and again, you sometimes you have to let the path. A lot of times we have the misconception of what the path needs to look like,
Right,
instead of allowing the path to unfold itself, right? And
right.
then going and finding out what you're supposed to do with it. And so it becomes perception versus reality. You know what I'm saying? This is
Mm,
the path that I'm on, before all of this, and I need to continue over here instead of, what I like to say, and this is the hardest part, to surrender, relinquish everything that you thought that you knew, but
yeah,
to surrender to the journey and allow the path to guide you, right?
yeah.
Because then you will find that maybe just maybe, you may have a few books inside of you. You may,
Mm.
you
If you
may
do, let me
exactly,
know, because I have a few books. I'm actually writing
exactly, and that's what I mean.
right now that is talking exactly about that.
Uh-huh. So what I'm
What
saying,
is
it's
our
kind of
life
funny
used
how that
to
works out,
be.
right? See, I told you we
Yeah,
always here, Faith. We always here, right?
we
You
are pretty
know,
much. We're always like neck and neck.
we got a lot more to talk about. But we're gonna go ahead and start to wrap it up because I do have to jump off. I have another one coming up.
Okay.
But Faith, before we jump off, tell people what you got coming
Oh man, where do I begin? Let me pull out my lit. No, I'm just kidding.
up.
So I got a bunch of books that I'm working on this year. I'm in the middle of writing, talking about where I thought my life would be versus where it is now.
Mhm.
I've got one coming out for a stepmother's handbook on grief, because I think that they don't get enough love. The stepmothers don't get enough love,
Right.
and then it's hard, after the fact, especially if that was an only child and stuff. So I've got books coming out on that, and have my new author page up on Amazon. Created
Yay.
some coloring books that my daughter tells me are entirely too difficult. I said, well, if you're not doing the most, what are you doing then?
This is very true. Um,
I have my private group every
okay.
month. I'm going to be this year, I'm launching a publishing company so that I can put all my books under one roof.
Yes.
And I think with my private coaching and stuff like that, I think that's all at this moment, plus my podcast. I do have my podcast.
And where can people find your podcast?
Release.com.
Releasebox.com. Are you on YouTube? Are you on all the
I am on all the
platforms?
channels. I'm not as smooth as Tony when I rattle them off, so I don't know. They might be faith.sage. They could be faith sage, but it's usually my name on there. But I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, all the things. Just, you know, look up
All
faith
those
sage.
beautiful
It'll be
things,
there.
man.
Or you can
Uh,
go to faithsage.net, and it's all linked there.
okay. And also have those down in the description as well. And so you guys, please do me a favor, go over there and check out Faith. She is a freaking rock star. When I tell you that we bounce some pretty good ideas off each other. And we got some amazing things coming around. And as always, Faith, you already know we're going to be talking again because we got some other things coming up, but we're going to keep those under wrap until we ready to do the thing, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right?
Now, I always ask my guests this before we wrap it up. If you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
I would say be kind to yourself. Only in the simple fact that every day that you breathe, every day that you're alive is a day that you've never had before. No one's ever lived this before, this exact moment, in this exact time, with this exact people, with this exact everything. And so everyone is learning. Every day we're learning something new.
Yeah,
So don't think that everyone out there has it all figured out, because they don't. They absolutely don't. They're pretending.
it's
And
very
so
true.
just be kind to yourself and give yourself grace, give yourself love. Pour into yourself first before you ever think about trying to pour into anyone else. So that way you come from a place of love, a place of respect, a place from, all the things good flowing out of you can flow into someone else.
I love that. Faith is always it's always fun talking with you. I think we learn from each other every time that we talk, and such a powerhouse in this industry. And I'm so excited to see where see how your path unfolds for you as we begin to move along, right? And I'm always honored and privileged just to be a tag along in your world. You already
I
know,
feel the same way about you. Just let me tag along. I'll hang on to that belt. Let's go.
I say, look, you don't have to hang on to the belt. We could, hey, hook on to the arm. Let's do some Wizard of Oz. Let's go down the yellow
Let's
brick road
do it.
together, right? We got so many other things coming up. For everybody who is tuned in, thank you guys for tuning in. We do have another one coming up here real shortly. I am talking with the host, Jay Lewis and Kate Mollison. Well, we're going to be talking about, they are the host of the Happily Never After. You guys don't want to miss that episode as well. So as soon as we get off, we're going to be jumping back on. You guys stay tuned. Be sure to tune in to that. And if you have tuned in and have not already, do me a favor, head over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. Now, if you know anyone who can benefit from these conversations that we have, just remember that please share this with them. And everyone that we have up here are in the grief field. They're beautiful people, and we are here to help you so you don't have to struggle in silence. Now, with that being said, this is Tony Lynch. This is going to conclude this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. And if I don't, you guys have a great day. Thank you for your support. And you guys, let's make a difference in this world. Faith, again, thank you for being on today. And as always, love you. Always have these beautiful conversations, and we'll be talking soon. And you guys, peace.
Bye.